Hello, 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 hello. Excited that so many of you are here to talk about SEO and what comes next. But before I get started, can I tell you guys a weird story? Anybody? Oh, all right. So a few weeks ago, I got a call on my phone. I didn't recognize the number. It was like 10 digits, 12 digits. So I assumed it was from overseas. I don't pick up numbers that I don't recognize, but this one called me again and again and again. So I finally picked it up, and what I heard was a gentleman with a Nordic accent. We're gonna call him Olaf. If you don't get that, then you don't have kids, but that's okay. But this is not Olaf the snowman. This is Olaf, the CEO of an e-commerce brand in Europe. So Olaf had a $50 million e-commerce business selling phone cases in Europe. And what he told me was he was pretty distraught because he had just lost half of his organic traffic over the last few months, and half of their revenue had disappeared. So he wanted me, as an SEO guy, to take a look at their site, figure out what was wrong, and fix it for him. So when I got off the phone, I dug into it because I love SEO detective work. So it's super fun for me. What I saw was their site was very well optimized. Title tags I was jealous of, all of their metadata, like strong backlinks, great content, fast page load speed, like everything that you could ask for when it comes to technical SEO on a site. So I didn't know what was wrong, and I turned to my new best friend, which is ChatGPT. And ChatGPT clarified this situation for me in an instant, and actually clarified a number of things about how digital marketing is changing in an instant. So what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I said, should I buy a cell phone case from insert brand name? I'm not gonna out them in this audience. And what ChatGPT came back and said was, well, according to customer reviews, you might not get the product that you ordered. You might get double billed, and when you call the 800 number, it's gonna ring and ring and ring, nobody's gonna pick it up. So I realized they didn't have an SEO problem, they had a reputation problem. And for all of us marketers in this room today, like the customers that you're marketing to, they've been burned by brands like Olaf's brand that fail to live up to expectations. And because of this, they trust AI platforms like ChatGPT and Google's AI. They trust ChatGPT more than they trust your brand. So today what we're going to talk about is how to protect your reputation, get your content out there and your messaging so that your customers, when they're having conversations and searching with AI platforms, they hear the truth about your brand rather than what your competitors are saying, or rather than what they just make up about your brand. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, my name's Dale Bertrand. So moving on, some of you may have, I don't know if I've met everybody in the room, but nice to meet you now. Basically, my background is technical. I studied engineering, I was a programmer, then I moved over into marketing, and now I really fuse the two together, and AI is my jam. I love the way the technology is changing because it's really right in my wheelhouse. I studied AI in grad school, I built a supercomputer. If anybody's hanging out, we can discuss over a beer after this talk. And I'm the founder of an SEO agency, Fire and Spark. At Fire and Spark, we only do SEO, so we don't pretend to be world-class at anything other than SEO, and we have a bunch of clients with logos, and now we're gonna get into it. SEO is changing. For those of you who've been around for a while, you've been targeting keywords because search engines used to work on keywords. Back in the day, if you typed in sales CRM for contractors, you would get pages like this one that have sales CRM in the title, and they have contractors in the copy on the page. This is a lexical search engine. This is the way search engines used to work. They used to look for keywords on pages, and that's why we would optimize for keywords. AI search engines do not work this way. This is traditional Google doesn't work this way, ChatGPT doesn't work this way, AI mode, AI overviews do not work this way. They are semantic search engines now. So they take a search like CRM or sales CRM for contractors and figure out what is the intent behind the search, what are they looking for. And you might get a page like that's about lead trackers for builders, not contractors, because semantically that is similar to what this person is looking for. It's not matching words and keywords on pages anymore. Now, to understand how this works, I'm going to tell you a little something about the Milton Public Library in Milton, Massachusetts, where I live. I've been to this place many times. If you go to this library, they have an electronic card catalog, electronic searching like any other library has nowadays. But they also have the old card catalog in there with cards for every book. And if you were to look at one of these, I mean, I remember this from like 30 years ago when I was little, so I'm sorry to the folks who don't remember card catalogs. But there's a card for every book and it tells you where it is. The example I'm showing you right now is called Modern French Cooking, and it just happens to be on the 3rd floor in room 12 on shelf 6A. Now, if you were to go to this room, you would see that it's on the same shelf as every other French cookbook, and it's in the same room as every other cookbook and recipe book. And they're on the same shelf and in the same room because they're about similar topics. They're semantically similar. Now, looking at rough layout of one of the many floors of this library, there are different rooms with different types of books. So if I'm looking for cookbooks, they're all going to be very similar to each other, and they're all going to be they're going to be in proximity, very close to each other because they're in the same room. If I were to take a cookbook and a children's book, they're farther apart. They're just not as close to each other. And this is actually how vector embeddings, which are technical, I'm not going to go too deep into them, how they work, where basically the technology behind AI search engines will calculate an embedding, which is a number in a high dimensional space that it can basically compare to all the other pages online to figure out which ones are similar. And it does that by figuring out how close they are in this multi-dimensional space. That's as technical as I'm going to get. But this proximity really matters, and that's how it's figuring out what is semantically similar. So old school search, we would do something like find keywords, and we would try to build content that targets keywords at different stages of the funnel for something like air purifiers. But for AI search, remember, we're thinking in this semantic space. It's a space where it's trying to figure out how close are all the different pages online in proximity in semantic space to the query. And in this case, one of your customers, if you were selling air purifiers, might go to ChatGPT or Google's AI mode and ask, are Dyson air purifiers good for allergies? And what it'll do is look for pages online that are close in proximity, just like books that are on the same shelf are related to each other on the same topic. So for us as marketers, we want to make sure that we're writing on the right topics and that these topics occupy unique spaces and unique locations in this semantic space. Now, for many folks, when I explain this, it gets a little technical, and that's why I don't go in too deep into like vector embeddings and how they're calculated and all of that. But it does help as marketers to understand that this is how AI search engines work. And when we're building content for AI search engines, we want to make sure that the topics that we're covering are closely related in this semantic space, not keyword space, to the types of queries and the types of conversations that we want our brand and our content to show up for. So what this means at the end of the day is, like, instead of ranking pages like an old school traditional search engine, these generative engines are giving us answers. And we've all used ChatGPT in this room, so you totally get that. But going back to the library analogy, that's like a librarian that, rather than giving you books on the topic, the librarian reads all of those books and just tells you the answer. For those of us who are lazy humans, like the customers that you're targeting, this is catnip. Like, they're going to be using these tools and gravitating towards these tools, whether we like it or not. So now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Google. So Google has a mission, and they put their mission statement on their website. Their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Nowhere in here does it say that Google is trying to help you to maintain your traffic or grow your traffic or even keep your job, if you think about it. Google's not trying to help your brand sell anything. They're trying to do their own thing and eventually, buy more jets for the founders. That's what they care about. So with this in mind, what they came out with, and I'm sure many of you have tried it, is Google's AI mode. This is their answer to ChatGPT. And I used Google's AI mode by asking it to help me find a pizza restaurant in Boston that had goat cheese pizza, because I love goat cheese pizza. I happen to be lactose intolerant, so this is the right pizza for me. It did a great job finding a pizza restaurant that had goat cheese pizza, that was great for kids, reasonably priced, it had parking, everything that I could want. This is much, much better than traditional search, and our customers are going to be using them whether they like it or not. Now, at my agency for various projects, we've been optimizing for AI overviews, ChatGPT, and then also Google's AI mode, and we've gotten a bunch of learnings from that. I'm going to go into those learnings, and then I'm going to show you our framework for optimizing content to get your messaging into AI search platforms. One huge learning is that GEO traffic, so generative engine traffic, that's ChatGPT, Google's AI mode, AI overviews, Perplexity, all of them. It converts better than traditional search traffic, but the exact amount is unclear. It really depends on what your customers are looking for and the content that you provide. But think about the reason why. Like, old school traditional search would send people to your page at the very top of the funnel when you were publishing your educational blog articles. Then you have the opportunity to cookie them or email them to get them, move them further down the funnel. And eventually you can convert them on a sales page, maybe with a buy button, maybe with a schedule a conversation with a salesperson button. But with these AI platforms, they're not going to your website. They're being educated by Google or ChatGPT. This is where the traffic that we're all losing is going. And the customers are still there, the intent is still there, the organic intent to buy your products and services is still there. They're just not showing up on your website early in the process. Instead, they're being qualified by an AI platform and coming to your website further down the funnel, where you have the opportunity to attract them with mid-funnel content, which is different from the top-of-funnel educational content, and send them to a sales page where you can convert them into a buy button or talk to a salesperson, whatever that is. Now, because the AI platform is qualifying this traffic for you, the traffic is going to be better traffic. The phenomenon that we're seeing, we call it traffic down, revenue up. And that blows a lot of people's minds, right? Because for the longest time, we were optimizing for traffic, and we were deriving our worth as digital marketers by traffic, and we were reporting to our higher ups about the traffic that we were generating. So AI search platforms like AI mode and ChatGPT, why do they convert better? Zero-click search, even though it is the bane of my existence, it actually reduces friction in the buying process. And AI is handling objections as long as I tell it what to say, which is what we're going to talk about. And it steers intent. So some people who are having conversations, let's say I run an SEO agency, so they might be having a conversation about AI or about SEO with AI, but the intent is to do it themselves. People like that are going to get their answer from AI and then go away. I don't need to talk to them. I don't want to talk. No offense to anybody. I don't need to talk to them. I don't want to talk to them. They're not going to hire me. That's not the path to my next boat, or however what I'm going to do with the money. But if they really are looking to hire an SEO agency, it will educate them, answer their questions, and eventually steer them towards my website if I'm in the consideration set, if I'm in AI's consideration set. And then also, as I said in my opening story, your customers trust AI more than they trust you as a marketer, full stop, for various reasons, like they've been burned in the past. Another learning is that GEO is harder and less reliable than SEO. I wish this wasn't the case, but it's true. With SEO, I could optimize for a #1 ranking, and then when I achieve that ranking, I can just Can't say I would just sit back. I mean, we've got to do a little bit of work, but still, it worked really well. With GEO, we're optimizing for AI platforms that have randomness built into them. If you prompt ChatGPT, you're not going to get exactly the same words, exactly the same answer every single time, and that's how all of these AI search platforms work. The other thing that's important is, like, what is GEO actually good for? It turns out that optimizing generative engine optimization and optimizing for AI platforms is not a plug-in replacement for SEO. I always feel like I need to apologize for that, but screw it, I'm not apologizing today. SEO, for the most part, drove a bunch of traffic, some of it, at various stages of their customer journey, and it was great at driving converting traffic for direct conversion. GEO is much better at brand visibility and also correcting any inaccuracies about the messaging around your brand and your products and your services. So this is like reputation management. But then there's also direct conversion when it's driving traffic that's already been pre-qualified by AI. Now, another learning is that GEO content GEO is a content strategy discipline, not a technical discipline. So I'm a technical guy, and I got into SEO because it was a big advantage that I understood how to write code, and I understood HTML and how JavaScript works and all of that. But with GEO, it's more about writing on the right topics and also placing your messaging using digital PR onto the right pages that Google is using in its training set, and also OpenAI is using in its training set. I'm going to give you an example. This is a case study, a GEO case study. I have not seen very many of these, but I met Wei at a conference for GEO in Austin a few months ago. And what they were doing was, instead of keyword research, remember, keyword research is old school. Those search engines don't even exist anymore. Instead of keyword research, she was optimizing for an e-commerce site that had 1,000 different products in the product catalog. Each of those products in the product catalog had details, like product details. So she was mining that product catalog for different topics that she could write about, and then using AI to generate content, thousands of pages of content that were on and I hate to use this term, long tail topics. But remember, we're not doing keyword targeting anymore, so it's not long tail topics. What it really is topics that occupy a unique location in the vector space, the semantic space, because we're not thinking keywords anymore, we're thinking semantic space. So if one of her customers was in conversation with an AI platform, this is the content that would get cited. And how it worked out for her was, now all of a sudden they were getting converting traffic from ChatGPT because of this strategy. Now, another learning is that proven and reliable strategy, even though you're going to hear people like me on stage talking about exactly how to do it, the truth is the framework I'm about to give you is a speculative framework based on our understanding of how these platforms work, and also based on the experiments that we've done so far year to date. It will be an evidence-based framework when we have everything worked out. We're just not there yet. That's really important. But here's another case study. So I met the founder of Lightspace.io. He was doing something similar to what Wei was doing. Instead of keyword research, he found a Reddit subreddit community that he could mine for niche topics to write about. And he's selling recruiting software, so the community that he was tapped into was for HR professionals and recruiting professionals. This was his blog. It has a bunch of topics on it. One of them was 5 key questions to ask during a registered nurse behavioral interview. That's very specific. He got this from Reddit, not from a keyword database. He generated the content with AI, which is, I'm just taking a moment to kind of like mourn when like humans generated content. But this is how he's creating converting traffic for his business. Now, another learning is that we need to focus on ChatGPT and Google's AI, which is AI Overviews and AI Mode. Like, those are the 2 platforms basically that we're focused on right now. ChatGPT, their usage is exploding, even though it's still minuscule compared to Google searches. And when you're looking, and I'll show that here on the next slide, ChatGPT, their usage for search is growing, but Google is still way ahead. So what I expect to happen is that Google will switch over to AI mode as the default experience, which means even more organic traffic is going to go away. And if you guys do the right thing as marketers, traffic down, revenue up. And I'll show you in my framework. There are other folks, like Brian Balfour here in San Francisco, who are arguing that ChatGPT is actually going to win, and he makes a very good argument based on how sticky ChatGPT is compared to Google. But either way, the tactics that I'm talking about today will work for either one. And then also, I want to make sure that you guys understand how powerful it is to use LLMs, this is like Google's Gemini or just ChatGPT, for market research. I learned this the hard way. I didn't believe it earlier in the year because AI hallucinates. It makes things up. But then I realized that AI is trained on everything that's been written on the web, including customer reviews and what your customers are saying about your brand and your competitors' brands. So just as an example, I went to ChatGPT and I said, what related topics should I include in my article about commercial water filtration systems? And it gave me good ideas for additional topics, because when you're writing content that you want to appear in an AI search platform, you want to cover the topic, the bullseye topic, but also related adjacent topics. And if you want to know what those related adjacent topics are that AI is looking for, just ask AI. It's really that simple. I resisted that for so long. Then also I asked about a specific brand, and you could be asking about your brand. What do customers think of Purina dog food? And it will tell you, in this case, there's some complaints and negative feedback. So I said, well, give me a list of the top 5 pet food brands. And it turns out Purina was not on this list. So if I was a marketer working for Purina, I could go back to ChatGPT and say, why isn't Purina on this list? Just ask AI. So now we're going to talk about how search works, and I'm going to tell you in detail how AI mode works and how to optimize for it. So all search engines, including the very first version of Google and what came before Google, what they'll do is they'll predict what you're really asking. Then they will retrieve the most relevant information, and then they will generate useful results. Very simple. Google's AI mode takes these simple concepts and really goes pretty deep into it. Now, I want to give you guys just a feeling for how it works, and then I'll tell you how to optimize for it. So first, what it's doing is it's taking the query or the prompt, and it's trying to understand, or it's predicting what information you're looking for, and critically, what the right output format should be for you. It might be a map, it might be a direct answer, it might be a comparison table. There's hundreds of different output formats. Then from there, it's doing query fan-out, which is basically generating variations of your query. And the reason it's doing this is so that when it answers the question in the end, it can cover the question from various angles using these different variations that it generated. Then it generates a reasoning chain. This is where it starts to get complicated, because you could imagine me going to AI mode or ChatGPT and asking a complex question. Something like, what restaurant should I take my client to in Seattle when I'm visiting? And I want to make sure that it has food for somebody like me who's lactose intolerant, and this isn't my best client, so don't go crazy on the cost. Something like that. That's a complex query. What AI mode will do is generate a reasoning chain. Like first, Dale wants to understand what lunch restaurants are open on that day. Then he wants to understand the pricing. Then he wants to understand if he can make a reservation ahead of time. And it'll just keep going. And the reason why Google breaks down complex queries like that is so that when it generates the answer, it can address all of the different stages of that reasoning chain for a complex query. Then from there, it's retrieving. And when it's retrieving, it's not retrieving pages from the web. It's retrieving passages, modular sections of your content. And that's really important because when I get into my framework for optimizing content, you'll see that we're thinking in terms of passages, not pages. And these are your passages need to be semantically dense, relevant to the queries you're going after, and modular so they can be lifted from your content and used by ChatGPT and Google's AI mode in their answers. So It's also retrieving personal context, which I need to mention. So this is how it's doing personalization. So if I'm having, or one of your customers is having a conversation with ChatGPT, it knows a lot about you, especially Google. Like Google's AI mode knows a ton about you if you're logged in. So it knows your search history, what you searched for last, where you live, all of this. And it's doing that so that when it generates the final answer, it can generate an answer that is relevant to you. As an example, I'm a programmer, so if I ask information about a programming language or something technical, Google's AI mode can give me a much more technical answer than it would give my wife, who's never programmed a day in her life. Now what it's doing is retrieving passages online. And when it's retrieving those passages, it's retrieving passages that are relevant to the query from step one, and passages that are relevant to the query variations that it generated, and relevant to the different steps of the reasoning chain, and relevant to the personal context, which might be me as a programmer, not somebody who's never programmed in their life. And we call this, or Google calls this in their patents, the custom corpus. And that custom corpus will contain like hundreds of passages, hopefully from your content, but also from various pages online. And then it will finally generate the response. It will generate the response in the format that it predicted as the right format in step number one. It will use the custom corpus of passages that it retrieved in the fifth step here. And that is the answer that it will finally give you. Now, I know that that's complicated, and the reason why I go through this in detail is really to point out the fact that this is a generative process, not a ranking process. It's quite different. And when Google's AI mode and ChatGPT are deciding on citations, like the source links that are actually going to send traffic to your website, it does that at the very end, after it's generated the response. That's when it figures out what pages it'll link to in different sections of the response, using pages that most likely appear in the top 10 traditional search results, and using pages that most likely provided the passages for the custom corpus. Now, is everybody with me? Because I don't want to lose people in the detail here. Good, thank you. What I'm going to get into now is our vector framework for optimizing content for these different search engines, for AI search engines. Definitely grab, because I'm not going to have time to go through everything in the time that I have today, but definitely grab the entire vector framework from the QR code and my entire presentation from the QR code. The way the vector framework works is it's really about optimizing content so that your content will show up instead of your competitors' content. And when your customers are having conversations with a ChatGPT or an AI search platform, your messaging will come up. That's how we're influencing what AI search platforms will say about our brand. Now, one quick example I'll give you is you might think as a marketer that if you write about your brand, provide information about your brand on your website, that AI mode or an AI platform will grab that information, and that's the messaging it'll give to your customers. But if you think about it, if your customer is going to ChatGPT and they're asking specific questions about, should I work with brand A versus brand B, there might be a specific targeted comparison page online comparing those two brands, your brand to a specific competitor. And if that comparison page is published by your competitor, it's not going to be very flattering about your brand. But the AI platform is going to use that comparison information because it's so perfect for the conversation. It's so relevant to the conversation that AI is having. So the vector framework starts with verifying intents. This is figuring out what are the right intents that your customers are going to these AI platforms with, and what are the micro topics you should be writing about, and what are the persona variations that you should be using or targeting with your content. So we're doing this with customer interviews and finding niche communities like subreddits. Basically, what you need to do is talk to your customers to understand the information that they need when they're making a buying decision for a product like yours. And there's a ton of examples here. You'll get this when you get my slides of where you can find this. This is what replaces keyword research. And an example here, this is a prompt that I use to extract micro topics from, let's say, messages from, or threads from like Reddit or a niche community or something like that. And what it's looking for is emotionally charged statements and requests for assistance and advice. So definitely grab this. And then the next step is to expand relevance. So this is developing content that is relevant to these intents and publishing content that is relevant to the micro topics that you've found. An example here, this is another prompt. I stole this one from Andy Crestodina, who's a friend of mine, but this is a really good prompt. What it'll do is it'll take content that you've already written and offer additional phrases and sentences you can add to that content that'll make it more relevant to the search intent that you're targeting. And here's just an example. Like I gave it a sentence from a page that we worked on, and it was, "This chair is designed to be comfortable for long hours of work." And it turns out the page I was optimizing was a product page on a website that sells ergonomic chairs. So the prompt that I just showed you told me to update this sentence to read like this: "This is one of the best office chairs for back pain, featuring lumbar support and an adjustable design that promotes proper posture during extended desk work." You can see how this new sentence is more relevant and more semantically dense to the types of conversations I would want this page, this product page, to show up for in AI search engine. And then the next step of the vector framework is clarifying your answers. This is about crafting passages, individual passages, that are modular and standalone in your content. And I'm going to show you a couple examples that are like catnip. They're like snackable when it comes to AI search engines like ChatGPT during their training. And so you want them to be semantically dense, to include a bunch of examples and analogies and the entities that you care about, and facts and comparisons. Here's one example. This is a paragraph that answers a very specific question. It's a good answer that is semantically relevant to exactly this question if AI is having this conversation with somebody. Then the next one is a modular section that is a pros and cons list that you would put on a piece of content on a page on your website. This is also quite snackable and for AI. And when it is relevant, AI is going to use these pros and cons and then cite your content and your brand. And then I love this paragraph because it compares two specific products. And you can imagine AI using this if it's in conversation with somebody about these two specific products. But the products are the Tesla 3 and then also the Ford Mustang Mach-E. And what it does is it gives some facts and comparisons that are direct facts and direct comparisons with numbers. And one of them is the Tesla offers a longer EPA range, 341 miles versus 290 miles. And you can see how these are useful facts to an AI if they're relevant to the conversation. Now, next in the vector framework is targeting mentions. Now, this is about getting your brand and products mentioned online on the right pages that are authoritative in AI's training data set with the right messaging. And to simplify that, what you're really doing is you're prompting ChatGPT and looking at the sources to see what pages ChatGPT is using. I did this for one of our healthcare clients, and it turned out that ChatGPT was highly favoring the NIH website and Wikipedia. So that makes sense that I want to get them mentioned with a digital PR campaign in the right context on those websites. Now, another example that I love, I had a conversation with Rand Fishkin behind the stage at a conference that he and I did in Munich. And he was telling me about his strategy, and I just love it, so I stole it, and now I'm giving it to you. So you can call me Robin Hood. But what he does is he speaks at a lot of conferences, and he does podcasts and webinars. So he has a carefully crafted speaker bio that has entities that he's trying to train the AI about. He wants to train AI about his company SparkToro and Rand Fishkin. And basically what it says is SparkToro is the makers of fine audience research software. And Rand Fishkin has dedicated his life to helping people do better marketing. And Rand is the co-founder of Moz and inbound.org. So his strategy is to get this well-crafted bio to be posted online in many, many different places for many, many different events and podcasts and webinars, all the events in person and virtual that he does, so that it appears so many different places in AI's training data set that this is what AI thinks about him and his company. So there's many, many different ways to do this. But the co-occurrence really matters, because I showed you the co-occurrence in the last example. Just to really drive it home, imagine a product page on the Amazon website. And imagine that there's a review on this website that happens to be about Apple Intelligence. It might say, Apple Intelligence is underwhelming. And it might say, ChatGPT voice is impressive. This is what AI is seeing times a billion when it's looking at all of the different pages that it has in its training data set. So you want to make sure through whatever guerrilla digital marketing hacks, and feel free to talk to us if you want some ideas, that you can figure out, maybe Rand Fishkin's technique, to get your brand and your products mentioned with the right sentiment, with the right messaging in as many places as possible, on the right websites that are already being cited by Google's AI mode and AI overviews and ChatGPT for the types of information that your customers are looking for. And then now we're on to the O of vector, and this is about optimizing for assembly. So remember, what we need to do for AI search optimization is to build these standalone passages on our pages that are semantically dense and highly relevant to the conversations we want our content to show up for in ChatGPT. What also matters is the structure of your pages. And this matters because AI search engines, when they're being trained, they're looking at the structure. One example is you want to build content pages that have one H1 and H2s that are related to the H1 and H3s that are very specific and related to the preceding H2. We've been doing that for a long time. But I'm going to give you another example. This is on the HubSpot website. It's the pricing page for a bunch of different plans. This is when you finally decide you just want to throw them your credit card and let them do as they wish. But one of the plans is the starter plan. Now, when we're looking at this page as a human, the structure on this page really, really matters. Like, we know that the starter plan, it costs $9 per seat per month, and we know which buy button to press because of the structure of the page. I scraped this page without any structure to show you guys how much of a mess it is. It's just a bunch of information. So this tells us intuitively that without the structure, it's hard to understand what the words on this page mean. We know that as humans, AI knows that too. That's why the structure of your content matters. And here's a bunch of examples, like a page that we created that has a table of contents, it has a content summary, it has call-out boxes, it has the modular passages that I told you about and gave you examples of before. It has Q&A. These are one-paragraph answers that give a concise answer in one sentence and then go on to tell detail in the rest of the paragraph. And they are following a specific question in the Q&A box or in an H2 or an H1 on the page. So this is what we're doing to optimize the structure of the content so that AI could extract some semantic meaning from not just these modular standalone passages, but also from the structure of the content. Then finally, we get to refreshing passages. Now, remember, we're refreshing passages and not pages, because AI mode and ChatGPT, they're looking for passages on the web that are relevant to the conversations that they're having. Now, the reason you want to refresh your best performing passages on your best performing pages is so that you maintain relevance. Imagine if you're an AI bot crawling the web and you find an article that is about the Paris Olympics. And this article might talk about the Paris Olympics in the future tense. And there are a lot of articles out there before the Olympics. Now compare that to another article that you might find online if you were an AI bot that is talking about the Paris Olympics in the past tense. You're going to know intuitively as a super smart AI bot that the second article talking about the Paris Olympics in the past tense must be more up to date, must be more relevant to any conversation about the Paris Olympics because it was published after the Olympics happened. That's one of the many different ways that AI is inferring a date on your pages, regardless of whether you've got a specific date at the top of the page or a specific date in the URL. So here's some recent developments, and this is just examples. You guys will grab this when you grab my slides, but you want to make sure that not only are you making sure that AI infers the right date, a more recent date than of your competitors, but you're adding these recent developments to your content. And this is what AI is looking for. This is how it will be able to tell that your content is fresher and up to date, more up to date than your competitors' content. And that is it for the vector framework. I want to make sure that you guys get that. I also want to mention like training, if anybody is looking for training around optimizing for AI search or how AI search platforms look like. That's what I love to do. It's why I love doing these talks. So definitely reach out to me, Dale at fireandspark.com. Is what I do. And then finally here, if you want to grab my prompts, like the prompts that I use to do this type of work, there's another QR code here. You can grab some of my prompts, and that is it for me today. Like, thank you for coming, and thank you for being my best audience of the year.